felt that nostalgia that I was talking about. You know, I felt exactly that way.
My organization, Foundation for Iranian Studies, was the first to, or one of the first, to create an archives of oral history. So the issue of memory and remembering in relation to events outside and changes outside, and how one creates one's past as one narrates it, has been a very significant area of interest for me. I've also written a book called Women in Exile, which was memoirs or life stories, autobiographies that I helped put together of women from 12 different countries, including my own. So the questions regarding memories and past and present and relating the past and present have been very interesting to me. That's why I'm so pleased and proud to be in the company of 3 extraordinary women memoirists. As you all know, the issue of creation of memoirs has not been one that has had much of a lifespan in, as a genre in Iranian literature. But in recent years, especially in the last couple of decades, we've been really blessed with a huge number of memoirs, most of them by women. And it leads us to think whether some interesting cataclysmic events have a role in wanting people to tell about the changes that have happened to them. And as the late beloved poet Nader Naderpur used to say, the recent revolution sort of was like a tablecloth being pulled from under a table full of various objects. Everything has changed its place. Everything has been replaced and reorganized. And so it goes for everyone's lives. And I suppose to write memoirs is one way of dealing with that, to creating a new identity or understanding the old identity, or relating the two together. So whatever the cause, we're going to be discussing that tonight with some of the people who have, who are best located, best qualified to talk about it. Our memoirists tonight, I'll introduce the 3 of them, and you know all of them, but just say a few words about them to refresh your memories. And then what we will do is try to answer maybe 2 or 3 questions that come to mind about this exercise of creating memoirs. And then, of course, we'll hopefully have you engage in the conversation as well. So the 3 women who are here tonight have come from 3 different contexts, but different but similar. Roya Hakakian is a writer. She's a poet in Persian and a memoirist in English. She's a human rights activist. Her memoir, Journey from the Land of No, won the Latife Yarshater Award in 2004 and the Elle Magazine Reader's Choice Award in 2005. She's co-founder of Iran Human Rights Documentation Center, editorial member of World Affairs Journal, and a blogger for that journal. Her new book is about the Mykonos murders, now for something entirely different, I guess, but very fascinating narrative that the book is coming out next year. And it's in the genre of creative nonfiction. Roya lived in Iran until the revolution, and since then has been living in the United States. Tara Bahrampour is a staff member of the Washington Post, a journalist. She writes on immigration issues for the Washington Post, but has written for the New Yorker on issues related to Iranians, especially Iranians in Los Angeles for the New Yorker. She's also written for New York Times, for there's so many of them, I won't remember all of them, but a number of journals and publications. And her memoir, To See and See Again, has been praised highly, and she, of course, left Iran when she was very young, at the age of 11, and then returned again to Iran in 1993, and then came back to write her memoir. So she's got a sort of a different context than Roya and Goli. Now, Goli Taraqi is one of Iran's best-loved fiction writers and novelists. She says that she lives between Tehran and Paris, and I think when she says that, she literally means between. Not just half the time there and half the time in Paris, but the idea of trying to navigate those two cultures and spaces at the same time. She insists that her books be published in Persian. And as a matter of fact, she is struggling with the Irshad right this minute, not at this minute, but at this point and at this time, for getting permission for the publication of two novels that she has just written. And we hope that she will succeed to get permission for that. One of them is called The Return, and the other one is called A Simple Event. And now, Goli's books have been translated into French, 3 of them. Her memoir, Mansion in the Sky, was translated by Friedl and published in English by the University of Texas Press. One of her stories, Three Maids, was published in Italian, in Italy. And she's one of very few Iranians who has been named Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres by the government of France. She has won the Latife Yarchater Award for 2002. You see, we really pick excellent awardees. And she has won the Beta Prize from Stanford University and the Golshiri Award, as well as the Critics Circle Award in Iran. And her, 2 of her novels, one The Pear Tree and the other Beta, have been made into films in Iran by CFG. So Goli is someone who's spent most of her time in Iran and most of her life in Iran, and she still spends considerable time there. So you have 3 different perspectives, 3 different contexts, in terms of memoirs and memoir writings and the relationship of that to the context of Iran and exile. So we will start with the question to the 3 memoirists, and the question is, why in heaven's name would you even think of writing a memoir? Because, again, as they will talk about it, it is a very difficult task. It's a very difficult task because of all the connections, emotional ties, interactions that are involved, and responsibilities to your own privacy, to your family's privacy, to other people's privacy. Where does your rights to the stories begin? Where does other people's intercede or interact? A myriad of issues and questions. So why would you even attempt such an exercise that in many cases alienates families, causes all kinds of mischief with particular constituencies and so forth? So I will ask maybe Roya to go first, and we will continue with the other questions later.
My memoir really begins in 1974 or 1975 and ends in 1984. And those were 10 years, a slice of time in the life of Iran that I thought was profoundly important. The transformation from pre and post, from pre to the revolutionary time to the post-revolutionary era, had been 10 years that not only changed me, but as we all, I'm sure, agree here, transformed Iran and, by extension, I think, transformed the region and the rest of the world and so on and so forth. As a result, I suppose in response to the question that's put before us, I wrote because I wanted to provide a different narrative about what had happened in Iran. I had three major objections to the narrative that as an Iranian-American, hyphenated Iranian-American, living in the United States on the East Coast, I was encountering. And being also Jewish, at least the narrative that I was encountering had three dimensions. One was that even in encounter with American Jews, especially when I first came to the United States, the first question that I would get after hearing that I was Jewish was, are there Jews in Iran? Well, yes, of course. That's where I come from, so we must be there. And so the question obviously offended me, especially because considering the roots of the Jewish community in Iran, which predates the roots of the Muslim community in Iran, I thought, how silly that American Jews don't know that Iranian Jews are there and have been there longer than most others. The second aspect of the narrative, which was circulating, which was important for me to debunk or challenge or provide an alternative to, was the narrative about women. That women in Iran must be creatures who are subdued, incapable, incompetent, without a voice, which, again, for most of you who are in this room, is clear that that was not the case. And again, or at least the answer was far more complex than the one that was circulating. And the third was that the Iranian Revolution, or what happened in Iran, was an entirely Shiite fundamentalist event, and that that one image of angry people throwing their fists into the cameras, chanting "Death to America" in front of the television cameras, is really the only Iran, and the Iran that basically overwrites and redefines everything else that came before. And so I decided to write, because all these three images circulating about who I was, each involving one different dimension, really offended me. And so I wrote to try to set the record straight, or at least provide an alternative narrative for the national narrative.
I did not plan to write a memoir at all. I left Iran when I was 11. I'm half Iranian. I grew up very half and half. I lived in Iran until the revolution, and came to America and had probably the typical traumas of a 12-year-old trying to adjust after that during the hostage crisis, in which case I basically put Iran aside for about 8 or 9 years, and I really embraced America. And it wasn't until college that I really started revisiting Iran again. And so I took Farsi class with Jana Pirnaz. I don't know if she's here. But I also reconnected with my Iranian relatives and started becoming interested in them, and started becoming interested in writing and using them as fodder for my creative writing class. It was a fiction class, and so I would change everyone's names, but I would basically go to mehunis and write down what happened in them and not change everything, and people were very entertained by it. So I had professors saying, oh, you should write a memoir. And when I went to journalism school, they were saying you should write a memoir. And being 25 years old, I said, no, I don't have a memoir to write. But when I went back to Iran the following year, when I was 26, I re-entered a world that I had lost. And Iran, for me, for the last 15 years, had become a mythical land. It had become this wonderful place of memories that we could never go back to, and you only heard stories about people having to escape dressed as sheep over the mountains, 9-year-old boys sent off to war, all the horror stories that we all know. So to return there was a real reintegration for me. And that was the point at which I thought that I could write a memoir, because there was an arc. There was a story of beginning in one place and being torn away from that place and embracing a new place, and then going back to the original spot. And within that, it was a story of Iran that, like Roya said, had really been hijacked by very few people, by the media. It was an Iran, the Iran that I saw in 1993 was very different from anything that we had seen. Oh, sorry. Is this not loud enough? The Iran that we knew from the media was very different from anything that I saw in Iran. I mean, you know, the warmth and the kind of fascinating subcultures and the way that people there are normal people just like everywhere else. And so I think that really was a motivation for both of us to write the memoir. But for me, it also helped me re-embrace my Iranianness. And the process of writing it really enabled me to reconnect with Iran and with what had happened to our family and the kind of dispersion of our family that had occurred. And also, we can talk about this more later, it allowed me to connect with an Iranian community that I had not been connected to in the past. So that is my basic reason for having written it.
I really felt, you know, sort of a Mongoli, and especially the old dear friend said today, you look like a hot mama. And in Iran, I'm also the salam mother. And so I'm sort of felt out of place, but at the same time, I was, you know, had such a maternal admiration for these two young writers, and I was very happy, you know, to share this panel with them. As for me, my case is completely different. I have been an Iranian, and I am an Iranian. I have all those, at the age of 16, my father sent me to America and said that just go and make something out of yourself, like the way I did. Don't come to me, I won't give you a penny. So, because he really believed that, you know, in America you can become, you know, you can make your life and stand on your own feet. And I went to high school, and then I went to university, then of course I returned to Iran, and for the last 30 years, after, you know, the very same year of the revolution, I went to Paris, and ever since I go back to Iran. But 30 years I've been living in France, but it has touched me. I have learned a lot of things, the language, the culture, but deep down, I'm so Iranian that I just get sick and tired of myself. You know, why don't I change a little? So, and even in sort of a very mama Iranian, you know. And so why did I write so the reason for writing my memoirs is quite different. It was not in search of identity and not writing about Iran at all. It was just that I'm a writer, and even if you read my memories in Scattered Memories, خاطره‌های پراکنده, or Do Dunya, My Two Worlds, they are written like stories. I wanted to write stories, actually, but stories, the characters I picked up from my family, because I have this privilege of to have such an extraordinary family that each one of them is a real character of a good novel, especially my father, you know. If I had an ordinary family, I probably wouldn't write about them. But really, these people in my family are outstanding. So then I was in Paris with my two small children. I thought I would just go back, you know, in 6 months when I came to Paris, and it lasted 30 years because war started, and it lasted 8 years. And after that, my children who were in school, it was too late to take them back. But I went to Iran and took my children with me every year, once or twice. So, but still living in Paris, somehow it was very difficult for me. I didn't know the culture, I didn't speak the language, and I fell into an extremely deep depression. And you know, one of the characteristic of the depression is regression. It means that you really go back, even as a personality, you know, these hours you go back. And I lost somehow the touch with time, because the actual time, at that time, it was very unpleasant. And future also, I was very uncertain. So I kept looking back, and in looking back in a way, that it was the only time real. It was reality of the time, of the past, which pulled me back to look. Then I started, I remember, because there are all stories, and this story is the Autobus Shemiran, the Shemiran bus, which is very popular, and many people identify themselves with the events. And I remember that Autobus Shemiran and my extraordinary relationship as a child with this driver. So when I wrote that, I published it, and it was so popular that everybody wanted, to see what happened. What happened. And so I started, to continue and write. Then it was, I must tell you that I wrote, of course, the main character is my father, and on my, I wrote a lot about my uncles, my cousins are here, and it was, I dedicated, anyway, this book to them, to my great aunt who's here. And then I discovered the difficulty of writing, about being honest and writing about the family. Of course, each one was a story that I wrote. But I didn't even change the names. At that time, my mind didn't work. So that became really a big problem after. So I wrote, the only thing is my mother is everywhere, but I could not devote a chapter to her, which definitely I will. The French famous writer Nathalie Sarraute, she wrote about her mother when she was 94 years old, and the mother was dead 100 years old. And at that time she dared, because she said it was so difficult, and it is very, very difficult. Azar Nafisi is an exception, and with this courage. Anyway, but still I teased, I said, with love, but I said what I wanted to say. My maternal family, they were extremely modern and civilized, and they laughed, and they didn't say anything. They didn't make any objections, because I've sort of, teased my uncles a lot, I exaggerated, it was a little reality and fiction. But my father's family, they're quite different. My aunts lived in city of Rome, they're traditional, and we're afraid of them a little. And so my brother said that leave them alone, leave them alone. And I said that, well, I'm a writer, I can do whatever I want. And he said that, no, you did enough. You did enough with everybody, and everybody was so nice, and nobody said anything, but leave them alone. So I said, well, no, I'm not going to leave them alone. Because I had written these stories, and in English, it's translated, also it's called the ladies in French. In French, it's called the aunts. So I said, okay, I don't say Ambehan, I will say the ladies. Because the first sentence starts with, father says, beware, the wolves are coming. So I said the ladies came, and I didn't say from where, I just changed the cities, and I said I never knew what relation we had with them. And then I went on, and I said whatever I wanted. But still it didn't work. They got, my paternal cousin got very angry and had called my brother. Of course, they don't see me anymore. And I said that, why, the things, is this us? And he had said that, I don't know, that she says ladies. And I don't know, and she had said that, how come they resemble us so much? Well, it just happens, that they resemble, but it's not you. Anyway, so this part of family now doesn't see me anymore, don't talk to me anymore, this is it. But if writing about a family, as said, you have to assume, you have to accept the consequences. Fortunately, the maternal part, they were nice enough. I remember my uncle just called me from America, your father, that was laughing and saying that, oh, Goli, if I see you, they were just reading your story in the radio, and you said that my uncle, he was a colonel, and I said he was afraid of horses. And so So he said that, oh, you know, but he laughed. They all laughed. They were so sweet because I said that he gave up the army and stayed home making good jam, you know, confiture. And then he said that, but he laughed. He took it as it really nicely. So this is it. This is what really happens. But for me, then when the story there was finished, it was so necessary for me, as if it was for me writing these stories, this memories of the past, had a therapeutic effect, as if I had once more to go back to the roots and come back and close the door to the past, because this nostalgia of the past, it's not good. It's some sort of sickness. It can paralyze you. Just always to looking back and not jumping. It keeps you from, you know, the flow of time towards the future. So although I wrote my memories, I'm not, you know, I finished with the past. The past is in me, in all of us, like our childhood. But we have to let it go and go with another dimension of time. Thank you.